So now I've got another thing that kind of, I guess, prompted a lot of discussion. I believe this past week on at least your Twitter. And it was this tweet by Sean McDowell. And I don't expect you to go into a lot of elaboration, I guess, on each of these points. But I know that a lot of these are just, it seems like, ignorant of what the Bible literally says.
Yeah.
Like number one, indentured servitude offered a means to deal with poverty, which, I mean, you would say that that's true, right?
Yeah. It's what I would say to a lot of these, the ones that are correct, is they're also true in the ancient Near East. Would an apologist then say, oh, well, there wasn't slavery in the ancient Near East? No, of course not. Those are wicked people, right?
Yeah.
Miss me with that shit.
I remember when I think it was Joel Baden, I think.
Yes.
I first heard that from.
That's where I got it. That's where I got it.
But like, okay, so one of number 3 is the first one that I see that kind of has a lot of problems with it. Kidnapping, including for the purpose of slave trading, was illegal.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I'm not correct me on this, but that's true for fellow Israelites, not true for foreigners. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think what we've got to do is we've got to make sure that we're being precise about our definitions. And not only that, but from the perspective, right? So if I were to say to you that it was illegal to rape someone in the Hebrew Bible, illegal to rape someone, in a very real way, in a very a narrow sense, that's true, right? It's from their perspective, what they considered to be rape, it was illegal, right? However, from our perspective, like they would not have considered in Deuteronomy 21, 10-14, they would not have considered taking a captive wife as rape. They wouldn't have considered it that, right? We would, I hope to God that the people listening would. But that's what it is, right? Because it's not consensual sex. Because how could anyway, it doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter, but maybe not for this discussion. So when we talk about kidnapping, it was illegal to kidnap people in the ancient Near East, not just in the Hebrew Bible, in the ancient Near East, to force them into slavery, right? And what that means is they couldn't go take a free person and steal them. They couldn't do that, right? Now, is that the only way that we would define kidnapping today? Well, no, right? We would define kidnapping, I think, very differently. So if taking plunder in war, I think we would define today as kidnapping, at least in a very real sense. You just can't go steal somebody or take somebody off the battlefield and bring them in and make them your slave in your home, right? We wouldn't allow that today, thank God. But the problem that I have with this, not only is it illegal to kidnap people and kidnap free people and subject them to slavery in the ancient Near East as a whole, as well as in the Hebrew Bible, but this is akin to saying, like people say this all the time, right? Look, Exodus 21:16, it says here that you can't kidnap somebody if you're even if you're caught with a kidnapped person, then it's the death penalty. And you're like, yeah. So does that mean that there's no slavery? I'm confused because, hey, John, did you know that it's illegal to steal cars and you can be punished for stealing cars? And that means that nobody can own a car. right? I mean, makes sense to me. If you
Right.
can't steal a car, that means you can't own one. Like, what? Well, it just doesn't follow. And what I think they're trying to do is say, well, in the transatlantic slave trade, you had a lot of slaves that were kidnapped, right? Now, I don't know. I'm not a specialist in the history of the antebellum South, particularly from a legal aspect. So was it illegal to do that? I know that at a certain point it was. But so in that sense, there's not continuity between those two, right? That aspect of slavery in the antebellum South and what we see in the ancient Near East, not just in the Hebrew Bible, but in the ancient Near East. But to use that argument to say that there wasn't chattel slavery or something, it's just bizarre to me. It tells me that the person really hasn't thought about what chattel slavery is. If that made sense.
It does, but I guess maybe playing a little bit of a devil's advocate here. How then would slaves come to exist? Like if because I'm thinking about this from the apologist perspective, like if they were not kidnapped, then how do people become chattel slaves?
Oh, sure. I mean, a couple ways that it happens. We see it in Exodus 21, 2-6, where somebody is born into a household to slave parents, right? I mean, they're house-born slaves, and again, that's not just in the Hebrew Bible. That's throughout the ancient Near East. If a foreigner goes into debt and sells himself and can't pay that debt back, ultimately becomes a chattel slave, right? That's the point of Leviticus 25, 44-46, is to say that there is no necessary release. You don't have to release them in the 50th year, right? Like you would have to do to the land, right? They are inherited property, and they are passed down. So if someone is a chattel slave already in the nations surrounding and they are purchased by an Israelite, there is no release required, right? So it's, if someone were illegally, I don't think Leviticus 25 is actually dealing with this, but I guess theoretically, if a person is illegally made a slave in a foreign land and then is sold into Israel as a slave, that might have been a way that it could, that you could have somebody who was kidnapped and became a slave. But I think ultimately the law would not like that in that foreign land, right? So, but yeah, chattel slaves, again, it's just slavery that is no longer contingent upon a debt. And so if you have a situation no longer contingent or not contingent upon a debt, that's chattel slavery. So if it's indefinite, if it's at the master's discretion when to release or if to release, that's chattel slavery, right? And there are different rules, again, not just in the Hebrew Bible, but in the wider ancient Near East as well. There are different rules, different forms of treatment that go along with that. And, different scholars argue different things about that, but those are the things that everybody would agree on.